Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Wi-Fi is Out with your two hosts, Eros
and Double T.
Today's episode, we're talking about the new D&D movie that came out. We actually we both watched it.
Became heroes
for watching it, that is true. And we have our feedback on it, honestly. Well, not even feedback, just our personal opinions on it. I thought it was fantastic, 10 out of 10.
I'm not a person that likes fantasy, but really amazing. No complaints.
Yeah, I don't have a single complaint about the movie. Everything about it, to me, just gave this aura of this is a D&D movie. You are watching D&D. It's insane. Given, I guess the cast kind of said that the movie was supposed to be based in the world of D&D, and it wasn't necessarily supposed to make everyone feel like it was a group of players and you were just watching their characters. But that's what it felt like to me, and that's what made me enjoy the movie so much. Was it you were watching the movie, you got to see the action, and it felt like you were watching a Dungeons and Dragons group visually represented as their story went through.
Don't worry, by the next movie they'll retcon that with a twist ending that it was a D&D session the entire time.
Just imagine how cool. That would be so cool. I would love that. Gets to the end of the movie, and then they all just, get up from the table, stretch their backs. Oh, that was a good one. Next Thursday? Oh, no, you can't do next Thursday. Okay, next Wednesday. Oh, you can't do next Wednesday. How about 2 Fridays from now? No, you can't do that either. Gosh darn it. That's how the whole thing goes for the ending. Oh, I would love that. Well, the movie starts out strong and just gets better, because it does a great job of introducing the characters. So with Dungeons and Dragons, when you join a new group, I can't speak for everybody, but at least with my experience from it, when you join a new group, usually your first day or week or so or whatever you're doing is introducing your characters, providing, the story, the background story, kind of what your class is, what your specialties are, stuff like that. And that was what it was. It was fantastic. You got to meet all 4 of the main characters, get a little bit of backstory from each of them on why exactly they're in the predicament that they're going to be in, and then what they bring to the table.
And they did a great job with the villains too.
Oh my goodness, the villain! I wasn't expecting that sort of a villain, because it was the old party teammate that turned against him and backstabbed him and stuff.
Oh, by the way, spoilers.
Oh yeah, which the movie's been out for a few weeks by the time.
No, a week.
Okay, a week still, but there will be spoilers. We'll be talking in depth about the movie, portions of the movie we liked, and that sort of thing. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't necessarily want to listen to spoilers, I'd say jump to the next episode and then just come back, or jump to a different episode. Come back when you want to see it.
No. This is their fault for not watching our Shazam episode. We explained these rules to them.
To be fair, we did explain these rules in the Shazam episode on a spoiler one that's on you.
What was your favorite part?
My absolute favorite part. That's a really good question, because there were so many parts that I absolutely loved. Oh man. God, that's a really tough one.
Then let me start with mine.
Okay, what was yours?
All the action scenes were amazing, but I think mine were the subtle, what is it called? Where they honor their past projects and projects happening.
Okay, explain further.
There used to be a D&D cartoon back in the day.
Okay.
And during the maze, you see those characters are characters dressed up like the cartoon characters.
Oh, I didn't even notice that, because I haven't seen the cartoon.
And then, I don't know if this was purpose, but from Critical Role, there's a character called Fresh Cut Grass.
Oh my gosh.
And that name was said a bunch of times.
Oh, that explains so much on why there was so many jokes made about it.
Because fresh cut grass.
Fresh cut grass.
Yes, sorry. I'm a little excited.
We can tell it's all good.
His character's all about, my creator named me this after his favorite smells.
Oh.
So that's why they kept going like, oh, fresh cut grass smells so nice.
That's really cool. Oh, man. I would say my favorite part was probably the very end fight scene, which I don't want to get into quite yet. But other than that, I would have to say oh god, I'm gonna mess up the name, but I believe it's called the Phaser Beast. It's the panther-like creature that had the tentacles coming out of its back, that projected its own image separately.
Oh, that one.
And that one's great because that beast in D&D, you can actually, if you do, happen to take one down, you can talk to your DM and stuff, and you can actually make a cloak out of it that allows you to create a secondary image of yourself that gives you like a higher ability to dodge attacks and stuff. And they did such a good job, because even when we were watching it, I wasn't expecting for it to be making its own illusion and then coming from the sides to end them in the maze. And I was like, oh, that's such a cool way to do it.
Now that you mention it, how did it make images around the corner?
So, with the tentacles, it looks like, because they can essentially extend out, so it looks like it had peeked around the corner and it had just barely that line of sight to peek it through. Because it's all based on line of sight, which is, D&D.
I love how the mimic was in the maze, too.
The mimic, I was so expecting that. From the first second that I saw, not the main group of 4 going for chest, but the alternate groups that were also in the maze go for chest. I'm like, one of these is going to be a mimic. It has to be. And it just so happened that the barbarian gal got the mimic. It was so cool. It was, I enjoy the fact that they threw one in and made it just like everyone knew it was coming, but you didn't know which character was going to get stuck with it. Which leads me into the whole, throughout the movie, it felt to me like I was watching an actual D&D campaign, because you got to see these events happen that would happen in a normal campaign, where you got a natural, like you failed. For example, in the kind of like bar tavern area where they first went to meet the sorcerer, he was casting low-level magic, like, the smell of fresh cut grass, but the whole time he was using the main portion of his magic to steal all the trinkets and gold from everybody so they wouldn't notice. So it felt like, he was like rolling really good and then got a really bad roll, and the DM had to like, kind of come up with like, oh, well, you realize that there are 2 other like players that walk into this bar that you recognize, and your concentration breaks. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then you had like really good rolls, like them, the druid saving the barbarian from the mimic by cutting its tongue, by getting a high enough roll to hit the AC score of the mimic. And so to me, that was a really cool aspect, to like have that background knowledge of like kind of how D&D works from the little bit I've played, to see it like on the big screen, like, oh, that was a failure. Oh, that passed. Oh, that was a nat 20. Oh, that was a nat 1. That sucks. Nothing from you on that?
No, just that scene. I was just more focused on the fresh cut grass.
You just focus so heavily on the fresh cut grass because of Critical Role.
Yeah.
I mean, they do a great job, and I'm glad they threw in like a little Easter egg into the movie.
Easter egg, that's the word.
Yes, Easter egg is probably the word you were looking for earlier. I will say something I found funny. So anyone that's a really big stickler for the D&D rules, the way they're written, will say that the druid can't wild shape into an owl bear. But what I thought was cool is, in my mind, I just had this whole conversation between the character or the person that was playing the druid and the DM just being like, I want to transform into an owl bear. I want to wild shape into one. And the DM being like, yeah, why not? Let's balance a little bit. And then, like, you got to wild shape into an owl bear, and everyone else that's like super hard stickler for rules would be like, that's not allowed. And it's like, who cares? It would be fun. If you talk to your DM, you can get away with anything as long as it's funny enough.
I wish there was more deer.
Oh my gosh, the whole small bit about her being a deer. She was a deer at the end. That's all the deer you get. I don't understand why it was... I don't understand that joke if there's something more to it than it just being funny. Because I'm not familiar with like pop culture D&D references. Like the fresh cut grass I didn't even recognize until you talked about it.
I literally have a pin on my favorite hat.
A pin of what?
Fresh cut grass.
Oh my gosh, you do. Throughout the entire movie, I mean, you had the introduction of the characters, so which one was your favorite?
My favorite?
Yeah, I would say out of like the four main characters that we see, our four main storyline protagonists.
Simon.
Oh, okay. The sorcerer?
Yeah.
Why so?
I've just always been a sorcerer.
That makes sense.
And with our recent playing of Diablo, just put me more as like, he needs to do more elemental magic. Come on.
He did fireball at the end. Or firebolt, I guess. Was what it was, not fireball. He tried a fireball because you saw him holding it during the time stop, which I thought was really cool. My favorite was the Barbarian just because I love tanky classes. And it was the entire fight scene where she goes to upgrade her axe and essentially has to fight a whole bunch of, like what would be considered low-level, mobs that just came in to distract her to give essentially you some form of entertainment while you're waiting for the upgrade, because upgrading in the game does take time. And she had to like fight barehanded and like slam the soldiers like face in the lava and kick them away, and like, oh, it was so great. I think that's probably my favorite character for that reason too, is you got to see her use the actual environment to her advantage versus only, like I make an attack with my axe. I go into rage.
Speaking of the axe, I really like the fact that they just picked up weapons as they went. It's like,
yeah.
You want this axe? Yeah. You want this walking cane? It's like, yeah, sure, why not? Turns out to be like a portal.
A staff of hither thither.
Which is basically a portal gun for anybody.
Well, so that's the thing, and maybe I'm misremembering this from the movie, but the Barbarian gave what then was just what she thought was a walking stick to her boyfriend, husband, whatever it was canonically for them, her significant other. And then when she returned, because she had been gone for so long and he had found someone else, he gave it back to her. But I don't remember them saying if she crafted it or if she just found it and gave it to him. Because if she crafted it, then she would, be able to craft other magical items, technically, because it was the Staff of Hither Thither. But I feel like she just found it and was like, oh, here's a really good walking stick.
Well, that's why she didn't know what it was. It took the sorcerer to figure it out.
Yeah, and the convenience of the Hither Thither staff.
The convenience.
Oh my gosh! And you had the portion of the movie where they're talking to the corpses, like using Raise the Dead, where you get to ask 5 questions, and then they go back to just being dead, or not Raise the Dead, but Speak to the Dead or whatever. And you could just tell that would be a scene where the DM's just fed up with the players' BS of like them just trying to do really stupid things. He's like, fine, you get 5 questions, and he's taking like everything they say literally. Like even when they're talking among themselves, he's like, that was a question, so that counts. And they're just like, what? And he's like, yeah. You have to do it 20 more times. And then the fact that in most D&D campaigns, like after you would, ask the questions or whatever, and then you leave to go on to the next thing, it actually represented it by showing like, oh yeah, all the coffins are open, the dead bodies are just lying there. They left one without even finishing the question, so he's just sentient now until someone asks him a question. And it was so great. I was so happy to see that.
Yeah, the only people who had consequences were us.
Why so?
The end credit scene.
Oh my! The end credit scene was a bait. Honestly, I blocked it out of my mind. You're gonna have to refresh me.
It was the corpse that they left. It's like, ask me one more question, please.
That's what it was. It was a bait, but it was funny because it just brought back to the whole point of like, oh yeah, every action you make in a D&D campaign has consequences, and sometimes they may come back. And honestly, we may see that skeleton come back in the future.
So do you think another movie is happening?
I hope another movie's happening. I genuinely thought that this was such a good movie. They did such a fantastic job, not only on the storyline, but on like the character development, like who they cast for each character and such, that if they don't get a second movie, I'll be disappointed. Because that was fantastic. They could go anywhere they wanted in the world of D&D.
What if it's a second movie with different characters?
That would be even better. You know how many times people run little one shots on D&D? So you have your little group, you do your one shot, and then you move on to your next like storyline. Like they could do that easily, and I would be totally okay with it as long as they keep like whatever they had in this movie, whatever like thought process they had behind creating this movie and creating the script for it. They need to keep that and move it on. They could have a whole different set of characters, an entirely separate storyline, maybe in the future, the past, at the same time, and it would be fantastic to see.
I mean, they already have books about before this movie happens.
They do. That is true. You did show me those. So maybe there's other books out there for maybe a second movie coming out and we just haven't seen them yet. Or maybe they're in the process of creating them. Or they could just continue this storyline. Like, it's a great storyline. I would love to see more of it. There's infinite possibilities in the world of D&D that they could create story from and entertainment and provide everyone like a great show. All they have to do is work on it. There's nothing. I genuinely didn't think there was a single thing they could have improved personally from my point of view in that movie to make it any better.
We've been speaking about the main cast a lot. What about the secret fifth member?
The Paladin?
Yeah.
Oh, man. The Paladin. So I actually have a theory about him, which we can get to in a second, but I thought he did great. He was exactly what I would think a Paladin would be. Righteous and holy, didn't, understand any colloquialisms when they tried to make, like, perverted, like, ooh. And he just, like, straight up, and then not only that, but you could tell that he was, in the story, a more experienced, D&D character, and was able to actually do damage and hit because he had higher level gear and stuff, would be the assumption. What about you? What do you think about him?
It wasn't till that moment when we first meet him, get to know him, that I felt, yeah, this kind of feels like a D&D campaign. Because he was so story scripted, it seemed like.
Like he popped in just at the right time?
Right time is like, there's no way that the DM is not controlling this guy.
He 100% was what you would think of as the DM, just throwing in an NPC that helps you on your quest because he knows you're going to need help. For example, when they fought the giant chubby dragon, which was fantastic because we saw a lot of dragons, but the giant chubby dragon was my favorite. It just rolls. That's all that mattered, was it just rolls. And so 100% it would be like, that would be the DM, being like, hey, they're going to go up against a really big fight. I should throw them a little bit of a helping hand. But my theory for him is, at the end, he approaches the main bad guy who was essentially trying to seize power, take all the... Well, he seized power, and he was trying to take all the gold and get away, and that ended up not working out for him, so he ended up trying to escape towards the end of the movie. I think it was at night, right? It was at night. He had like one goblet or whatever, one chalice, tripped or whatever and rolls, and you see him be approached by the Paladin, and the Paladin said something along the lines of, so it seems I have found you, or something like that. Which makes me think that the Paladin could possibly be part of like some bigger, darker side to the story, and maybe he's not actually a paladin with an oath, or he broke his oath recently, because as a paladin you take an oath upon creating your paladin, and then if you do something that goes against your oath is then broken, and you essentially become an oath breaker.
To be fair, we only saw the bad guy in this movie, not the big bad guy.
That is true. They never said that it was specifically going to be the big bad guy. The big bad guy would more so be possibly the sorcerer or the evil wizard. I don't know if he's a necromancer, I think is what he technically would be, because it seems like that was his whole thing, which he was a red wizard. So a red wizard necromancer. Or red mage. Can't remember if they said red wizard or red mage for the cloaks.
I think it's red wizard.
Probably red wizard.
And then he was more a necromancer.
And that is going to be a really cool fight, possibly. I don't know how they're going to do it with the amount of undead that he's probably going to have in control if they do another movie. And then what the Paladin's going to play in it. Because I'm really hoping that if they do another movie and they keep the same main characters, I'm hoping they bring back some of the other side characters like the Paladin or, like the Barbarian's SO that eventually left her and was like, here's your walking stick. Like, I hope they bring back some of those characters just because it's funny. But that's all I've got. Definitely worth watching the movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Go see it in theaters before it's out of theaters. You will not regret it. And if you do, I don't know what to tell you because it was perfect. Any last words from you?
No, I can't think of anything.
Okay. Well, with that said...